we fall into the trap of sexual fornication, there's a bondage. There's a bondage when we fall into a trap of any of these sins that are listed in verse 9 of 1 Corinthians chapter 6. There's a bondage because all of them go against what God has had for the purpose of us. Every single one of us has a purpose. Every single one of us has a design and intent. And Paul says that you were designed for the Lord. The body is for the Lord and not for fornication. All of this goes back to the Corinthians have an obstructed view of each other and an obstructed view of the Kahillah and being at odds with one another and falling into these various traps because they took their eyes and their focus off of the execution stake. I can tell you right now, just specifically on this issue right here, God delivered me that day. I'll never forget. I went and spoke to Dr. Kiker. It took a couple of weeks, but we got into an accountability system. And I just want to extend it to you today. If you're struggling with an issue of an addiction, if you're in bondage to pornography, if you are in a state of fornication that you're struggling with, I want you to come and speak to me, and I want us to pray together, and I want us to examine how can we resolve this? How can we go forward in accountability to one another? Today is the day of salvation. Today is the day of the Lord. Freedom of purity, freedom of connection. You know, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are profitable. Paul says, look, just because you think that you can do all these things, we have a lot of freedom, but we live in community and we live connected to one another. And if we're going to live in connection to one another, that means we have an obligation to one another. We have an obligation to walk with God and to help each other. We can't assume that just because Paul's defined factionalism and these things, the earlier chapter, that's not somehow having the impact. And when Paul defines what he does in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and the remaining chapters of 1 Corinthians, this is all because we're living in relationship to one another. And we have to be cognizant of how am I living toward my wife? How am I living toward my husband? How am I living toward my children? How am I living toward my parents? How am I living towards my fellow man, my fellow woman at Beth Yeshua congregation? And this really takes us to the point of why we do Zikaron. The Remembrance Supper. It takes us back to that Passover experience. And Yeshua laying his life down for us. And every single one of us, when we look at ourselves and when we try to judge ourselves based upon somebody else, we take our focus off the cross.